Hello everybody, my name's Ryan and I'm a driving instructor. A, B and M roads. What are they all about? Find out soon. So then, these A and B and M roads, what are they all about? Well, they're all different types of road. Let's take you back to 1922. The government decided that they need a system where they classified roads depending on their priority. So they came up with a sectored system, numbered roads around the country, and they classified them as A and B. A little later on, in the 1950s, they came up with the M road system, the motorways. But we want to know a little bit more than that. Why did they invent them for these little metal things that were floating around the countryside doing 20 miles an hour? Well, let's follow it.
A trunk road is a road that is distinctive amongst all other roads. It's marked on a map with a T, although Google would make you think that these roads have disappeared. They are still there. Trunk roads are an individually numbered road. They may be individually numbered for the all, part or none of the length. Equally, an individual trunk road may contain sections of different numbered roads along its length, which isn't a confusion, of course. Not really. There's lots of people that are responsible for trunk roads, and trunk roads are sometimes confused with primary routes. The vast majority of trunk roads are also primary routes, but not all primary routes are trunk roads. Also, non-primary trunk roads, including parts of the A5410 on the northern side of Wolverhampton, are in a category all of their own, a Class 3 road. So what really is a trunk road? Well, trunk roads were invented on the 1st of April 1937, according with the Road Act 1936 when it came into force. They created 30 trunk roads totaling 4,459 roads. A lot of roads were actually kind of roads that were direct routes from one place to another. The Trunk Road Act was changed in 46, then it was changed again in 56 and 1999, and yeah, it kept going. Basically, trunk roads ran in a kind of parallel version to what should be a motorway. The numbering system involved included using the prefix T. However, most of these just ended up as an A road, and they ended up being bracketed to T. These were all marked on Ordnance Survey maps, but like I say, because of Google, you'd be hard pressed to find them. There are quite a lot of trunk roads around the UK, and sometimes you can discover them in all of the craziest of places. Trunk roads were often kind of not the whole length of a road. For example, a bit of the A19 might have been a trunk road, and as soon as it went past Sunderland, it became a different road number, but still retained the trunk road. Primary routes. Primary routes are marked with a green sign. Primary routes are there for you to follow as a motorist so you can get to your destination. There's bits of primary routes around the UK that are not actually A roads. And sometimes they use B roads as primary routes. Again, not to confuse you, just to make up this primary route network. It's kind of secondary to the trunk road system in that most of the primary roads are not directly linked from place to place. Primary routes are supposed to be used in whole on A or B roads to show the most direct passage. Say, for example, from Newcastle to Carlisle, you'd go on the A69, which is a green signed primary route. But you could use other roads. You could drop down further down south into Durham and pick up the 689 and follow the 689 all the way into Carlisle. But it's signed in white. That white sign is a non-primary route. Again, they got together with all the facts and the figures and they tried to work all this out. Eventually, primary routes were created in 1964 with the signage changes. This also created the non-primary routes, i.e. roads that were important but weren't to really be used as link roads. A B road is generally a road that is identified as a connecting road between two villages or towns where it's inappropriate to have an A road. B roads were often numbered because there was a primary or an A road route, and you'd prefer to take the A road upgraded route than the country lane B road. Of course, B roads have come into their own more or less in recent times, given that they now become shortcuts or rat runs between two places. You find this quite a lot in and around Northumberland B roads, where they do link two different places that are not linked together by A roads. A C road, you very rarely see them. The C roads are often marked locally. C roads are kind of like an unclassified road, quite important routes and maintained to a high standard, often gritted when it snows, things like this. But C routes are kind of third down the list of things that they need to improve when they go around checking all the roads and things like that. There's a good example of a C road that runs right through the middle of Newcastle. I think it's numbered though C118 or something like that. The numbers are irrelevant really, but it shows you how important that route through Newcastle was or is. So what happened with these sectory things? Well, why not link two major cities together? Let's build a road between London and Edinburgh. That road between London and Edinburgh, let's call it the number 1. Anything to the east of that, all the way at the North Sea, can be numbered in the 1 sector. Let's start down south at number 1, 101, number 11, and let's move all the way up. So the higher the number, the further north you are. That way you can determine where the number 1 road is, or the main road that marked the boundary of your sector. So they came up with this idea and they said, well, what about number 2? Can we make number 2 the Thames? And they said, no. What we'll do instead is we'll link a road along down to Kent, through Kent, and we'll call it the number 2. But everything so clockwise of the Thames, we'll call that number 2. So that there's obviously, in the area number 2, there's obviously a lot less roads in that area. There's obviously a lot less numbered roads in that area, to a point where number 1 area has exhausted its 3-digit numbers, and it's actually 2-digit numbers. Well, almost 2, all of them. So he ended up using 4-digit numbers, and that's kind of where 4-digit A roads came from. What about Sector 3? Well, they kind of did the same thing. Let's draw a line between one city and another. Everybody on that side call it a 3. If you live on a boundary between one of those sectors, you'll see signs that say A155 and A655. That means that you're between the Sector 6, or in Sector 6, between the A6 and the A1. Of course, they did come up with a different system for Scotland, where if you look at that map, they drew a line between Carlisle and Edinburgh, Edinburgh and Glasgow, and the last line linked all the way up to kind of John O'Groats, the A9, and left it like that. The system was quite robust and worked really well, and anything on the clockwise side of it was numbered to the nearest road. So if you had a road in northern Wales or in Lancashire, that was always number 5 because it was clockwise of the A5. And anything that was crossing that road normally didn't carry the number through. But recently they've kind of changed that. And the reason is so you can follow a road in its length. It might have a primary status or a non-primary status, but links two major urban areas together. A very good example of this is the 689. That kind of runs mazily through the north end of kind of the country. It goes all the way from Cumbria through Northumberland, all the way down into Durham and across into Hartlepool. That road in sections is numbered the same. It crosses the 5 sector, the 6 sector and the 1 sector. That particular road is also a primary route, a non-primary route, and almost at one point a B road. When we look at where roads cross into different sectors, then they decided that they wouldn't originally carry this on. Later on, they changed it where the road does carry through. The sectors give you an idea of where you're supposed to be when you're driving around. You can identify a road and go, oh yes, I know where I am. If I'm on the A495, then I must be up in the middle of Wales somewhere, probably in the top corner. I'm probably pretty close to maybe even the A5. The system was quite good and it worked really well, and it duplicated a couple of numbers, so they had to sort that out, and it kind of worked for a very long time and people like this system. Of course, it's all become fairly irrelevant now with sat-nav, and everybody's got a sat-nav in the pocket or a map. The whole thing has become irrelevant because people don't tend to follow the numbers anymore. They tend to follow the words or the signage. So what about motorways? Well, motorways developed in the 50s, came along and numbered them. They didn't quite follow the sectors though. They followed a slightly different line. There was a big plan to change all of the major numbered roads, for example the A1 into the M1 or the A2 into the M2, but that didn't happen because they already had a primary trunk road status. Of course, eventually they did create the A1M or the A6M. These roads did appear and they upgraded the existing path of those major primary routes. Maybe they should have upgraded some more whilst they were doing those roads, but instead they created parallel roads and they used motorway numbering systems. Now, motorway numbering systems don't quite work the same. It's more of a radial system they use rather than a sectored system, hence why the M55 it looks like it's in the wrong place.
Well, I hope you like that little bit of insight into A, B and M roads and why they were created and the sectors involved in and around them. There's a lot more history and there's a lot more stuff out there. Go and find it. If you do like what you see, like and subscribe. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye. Oh, the video didn't record. Crap. We'll have to try again. Oh, it has. Oh, it's recording. Right. Oh, here we go.